Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present my study. My name is Miho Tomita from Sophia University, Tokyo, Japan. I work in the field of second language acquisition, and my research focuses on L2 learners' speaking development and CAF study. So now I'd like to talk about my paper titled Dimensions of L2 Oral Language Performance, Study of Complexity, Accuracy, and Fluency Development. The starting point of the study to observe how and why learners develop their speaking skills. To that end, in the field of applied linguistics, there are three components used to evaluate L2 oral development and proficiency. And that's the main focus of my research: complexity, accuracy, and fluency, CAF. And it said that the level of CAF can inform how much a learner has mastered L2. Although the emphasis and weight of each component should differ depending on various factors such as learners' levels and their goals of learning, L2 lessons should be planned in a way so that learners can ultimately gain all three components equally. However, the problem is that the growth pattern of CAF components are complex, and this is mainly because learners cannot devote equal attention to every aspect because of cognitive limitation. For example, stronger performance in one component may correspond to worse performance in another. With regard to this, there are three important hypotheses: limited capacity hypothesis, cognition hypothesis, and dynamic systems theory. There are many empirical studies with regard to CAF interaction, but most works have examined performance at a single point in time, not development over time. From such studies, it is difficult to see overall picture of learners' oral development, so additional longitudinal studies are necessary. Some researchers have conducted longitudinal studies. However, the results are quite mixed. One of the reasons behind this may be the proficiency effects, because learners at different proficiency levels probably perform differently. So to see the overall pictures of learners' oral development, studies in relation to proficiency are necessary. So I decided to do a longitudinal study using oral language data of different proficiency levels. These are the research questions. Research question 1: how do the CAF of L2 speaking develop over time? 2: how do components of CAF interact with each other in the development of L2 speaking over time? 3: how does learners' proficiency relate to CAF improvement in the spoken production of L2 over time? The participants were 31 Japanese college students. There were two groups. Group 1 was at a lower level, and Group 2 was at an intermediate level. Data were collected 4 times in the semester, about 1 month apart, and an impromptu speech task was used. Beyond the speaking test, I also used a questionnaire in order to explore factors that might affect the results. For example, individual differences like fear of making errors and task difficulty perception. There were 7 evaluation items on the task: anxiety and confidence in performance. And at the bottom of the form, there was an open-ended comment box. All the data were transcribed and coded into clauses and ACE units. And this is the summary of the measures that I used. As for complexity, both syntactic and lexical complexity were studied. 2 measures for accuracy and 2 measures for fluency as well. And this is the summary of the analysis I employed to examine each question. So let me move on to the results of the study. The first research question was about the developmental patterns in calf. How do calf develop? How do calf develop over time? This is the result for syntactic complexity 1. For group 1, the lower level, the scores decreased slightly first, and then improved, and then again decreased slightly. And it was a non-linear trajectory with fluctuations. For group 2, the intermediate level, it decreased at first and then decreased once again, and then increased at last. Their trajectory had a mild U-shaped curve. And this is the result for syntactic complexity 2. For group 1, the mean decreased slightly and improved and fell again. For group 2, the score increased linearly. According to statistics, the students in both groups were able to make more complex sentences over time, although they showed slightly different trajectories. Looking closely into group 1, both trajectories showed some ups and downs. What are the reasons? I examined students' self-evaluations for possible factors for those fluctuations. In the round 1 open-ended comment box, one student wrote, there are many things I wanted to say, but I could not explain them in detail. Then in round 2, she wrote, compared to round 1, I think I did better because I just tried to push out all my thoughts as much as possible, and so on. Just like these comments, many of the students' perceived competence were not consistent over time and showed some fluctuations over time. So that might be one possible reason for the ups and downs of the scores, since learners' willingness to communicate and their performance said to be correlated. But anyway, mild positive growth was seen in syntactic complexity for both groups for this study. This is the result of lexical complexity. The overall development was mild. There were slight changes in growth, but according to statistics, it showed no significant differences for both groups. When examining students' self-evaluations, the mean scores of the level of retrieving lexical items remained the same over time. This is the result of the accuracy 1. It showed a U-shaped trajectory with a decline followed by a steep increase. Scores showed statistically significant differences for both groups. This is the result for accuracy 2, is an inverse U curve. This time, because for accuracy 1, the number of error-free classes were calculated, but for accuracy 2, opposite to that, I calculated the number of errors. Score showed statistically significant differences for both groups. When looking at the result of self-evaluation, the scores for anxiety regarding making mistakes improved over time. In other words, students were more afraid of making errors than they were later. So in early stages, students might have avoided making mistakes due to anxiety. Over time, as the students' error anxiety decreased, they began producing more sentences. Looking at the content score, they started to focus on conveying content, and their scores improved over time, and it led to more errors than before. However, in later stages, the number of errors decreased. The students' error anxiety scores were low in later stages. So as they became less afraid of making mistakes over time, maybe they became better at allocating their attention to grammar usage. When looking at the scores of students' attention to grammar usage, they displayed a positive linear growth. This is the result for Fluency 1. And this is for fluency too. Statistics show significant differences between round 1 and 4 for both groups, for both majors. So both fluency measures showed a positive linear change for 2 groups. Also, the questionnaire results indicated that students' confidence in speaking significantly improved on a positive linear trajectory. These are the mean scores, improved over time. There was a positive correlation between the fluency development and the students' confidence in speaking. The second research question was about the relation among CAF. How do CAF components interact with each other over time? And these are the results. First of all, the lexical complexity is negatively correlated with syntactic complexity and accuracy for both groups, but positively correlated with fluency. So it implies that more learners' lexical variety increases, the more likely they are to fail at making complex and accurate sentences, but the more likely they are to gain fluency. Regarding the relation between complexity and accuracy, results showed a positive correlation for both groups. In other words, as learners speak more accurately, their sentences would become more complex. This result supports Robinson's cognition hypothesis. However, this study only partially supports Robinson's hypothesis because, according to his framework, accuracy and complexity grow at the expense of fluency. But the result of the study revealed that there was a strong tendency toward a positive correlation between fluency and complexity for both groups. It means that learners were likely to use complex structures as they produce more clauses and words. As for the relation between fluency and accuracy, the results were mixed. There was no firm evidence of trade-offs. This might be because of the growth pattern differences of fluency and accuracy. The third research question is related to the proficiency effect, whether learners' proficiency levels have an influence on CAF development patterns or not. And this is the result of the two-way repeated measures ANOVA I conducted. It suggests that learners at low and intermediate proficiency levels follow the same patterns of CAF development, except one syntactic complexity measure. As you can see, it shows significant differences between groups 1 and 2 in syntactic complexity 1. On other measures, there were no significant, statistically significant differences between two groups. This is the result of syntactic complexity 1. And when we look at these scores, there is a difference in round 3. The complexity score for group 2 decreased in round 3. So I examined the results of the self-evaluation questionnaire to look for the possible reason for this difference, and it suggested that this difference may be caused by the degree of cognitive task complexity. The mean task difficulty score in round 3 decreased for the intermediate level students. That means the students did not find the task as difficult in round 3. Previous studies findings such as Robinson's cognition hypothesis proposed that a cognitively demanding task would result in greater complexity in L2 production. In other words, task difficulty possibly affects learners' syntactic complexity score. So decreased syntactic complexity in group 2 in round 3 could have happened because the task might have been less demanding. In short, The results suggest that learners at low and intermediate proficiency levels follow the same pattern of CAF development. And at the same time, there may be a relationship between CAF development and task inherent complexity. To that end, it is important to take proficiency effects and task types into consideration when observing CAF development, because proficiency may interact with the cognitive demands imposed by task complexity. In conclusion, this study examined developmental patterns of CAF and the relationship between them over time. Depending on the levels, learners showed different patterns of development. Some are linear, some are zigzag, some are U-curve, but students showed some improvements in all CAF components over time: syntactic complexity, accuracy, and fluency. Only exception is that lexical complexity, which had a mild improvement, but statistically not significant. The finding of the study suggests that possibility of implementing all CAF at once, and also each CAF have different developmental patterns. The findings also revealed that the lower and intermediate proficiency learners have had similar change trajectories, except one syntactic complexity measure. Beginning learners and intermediate learners trace the same growth pattern. The study also suggests that the possible need for manipulation or control of inherent task difficulties or conditions. So this is the overall view of my paper. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.